Thank you. The final item of business this evening is a members' business debate on motion 19823 in the name of Keith Brown on Scotland national football team qualifies for the 2026 FIFA World Cup. This debate will be concluded without any questions being put, and I would invite those members who would wish to speak in the debate to please press the request to speak buttons. And I call on Keith Brown to open the debate. Up to 7 minutes, please.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. It is, of course, a genuine pleasure to open this debate, and as a long-suffering Hibs fan, let me say right at the start, if you told me that one day I'd be standing here celebrating a Scotland team that qualifies for a World Cup, thanks in part to a goal scored by Lawrence Shankland, given the team he plays for, I'd have said that you spent too much time in the famous five-stand hospitality, which is exactly what I did last Saturday. But football is full of surprises, and what a fantastic surprise this qualification has been for the whole country. It's given everybody a huge lift, and will do so, I believe, right the way through to the group stages and beyond next year. And for the first time in 28 years, Scotland is going to a FIFA World Cup, and what a way that we got there. A 4-2 win over Denmark at Hampden. A match full of grit, flair and just enough nail-biting, buttock-clenching tension to confirm that, yes, once again it was Scotland trying to qualify for a World Cup. I remember myself, and most of us will have our own memories of previous World Cups. The first one I remember was actually 1970, but the first one that Scotland qualified for was 1974. And when Scotland went out, the only team ever to have done so at that point without losing a match. 1978, again, I actually had a favourite manager of Ali MacLeod, which is not a popular view. I just think somebody that was very confident, perhaps overconfident, and very positive about Scotland was a refreshing change from some of the managers we'd had. And also in 1982, I didn't see any of the World Cup matches. I was in the Falklands at the time, but I did possess a high-frequency radio, so many people came to me to find out what the scores were, but I never saw any of the matches until many months later. But back to that match with Scott McTominay opening the scoring very shortly after the start. And to finish the job, the stoppage time strikes from Kieran Tierney, I still think that was the best of all the goals scored on that night. And there was three fantastic ones to pick from. And of course, Kenny McLean scoring from his own half sent Hampden into joyful mayhem. And of course, the Tartan Army, the most passionate, positive, musical and occasionally sunburned supporters on earth, from Mount Florida to Munich, they carry Scotland and our hopes with them. And we heard at our committee last week how much of a job they did for Scotland in its international representation at the European Championships last year, and we fully expect they'll do the same for us in North America next year. But as we celebrate this achievement, it's worth remembering that Scotland's football story didn't begin in 1872 or even 1978 with Archie Gemmell's hip-swivelling heroics. Our footballing heritage stretches back almost 5 centuries. Just a few miles from my constituency sits Stirling Castle, where in 1981 workers repairing the Queen's Chamber found a small leather ball stuffed with a pig's bladder, wedged high in the rafters. It had been there since the 1540s, and today is recognised as the world's oldest surviving football and is proudly displayed at the Stirling Smith Art Gallery and Museum. And in 2006, Presiding Officer, that same Stirling football went to the FIFA World Cup, even though Scotland didn't. And it wasn't there to be kicked about, thankfully, but as part of a special exhibition in Germany celebrating the origins of the global game. So even before our modern national team made its return to the biggest stage, a wee leather ball from Stirling Castle had already flown the flag for Scotland at a World Cup. And wouldn't it be fitting if at the next World Cup, once again, the oldest football in the world was to be piped on at the opening ceremony of the North American Games? And it speaks of something bigger, that Scotland has not just played football, Scotland has shaped football. Indeed, Scotland, in my view, has invented football. Because when the modern game began to spread around the world, it was often Scots who carried it, the so-called Scotch professors. Players and coaches who travelled across Britain, Europe and South America in the late 19th century taught the passing team-based style that became the foundation of modern football. One of them, Thomas Donoghue, even as a statue in Brazil, recognising his role in establishing the game there. And it's quite something that in the land of Pelé, they built a monument to a lad from Busby. Proof that Scotland's influence on world football has been lasting, global and profound. And I think it's true to say that Pelé once said that Scotland invented football and Brazil perfected it. It's a remarkable thing to stand in front of a ball that tells us football in Scotland isn't just a sport. It's a thread woven through royalty, ordinary folk alike, through centuries of community life, long before offsides, long before VAR, long before anyone shouted, "There's no offside referee, get your eyes checked," all the stuff that we say these days. Somebody in Stirling Castle leathered the ball that high to get it stuck in the roof, perhaps miskicked it by a courtier or something. An early attempt to avoid taking responsibility for a wayward pass, but hugely important that that ball, the oldest football in the world, was in Scotland. And of course, like golf, Scotland gave the world the game of football. Jed O'Brien, the football professor, has referred to football being played in the 1500s in Scotland as reference to a game of football and attempts by landowners to stop the game of football being played. So when Andy Robertson goes up to lift the World Cup, football will be truly coming home, I think they call it. The humble leather ball connects the courtyard of Stirling Castle to Hampden Park and now to stadiums across North America. And speaking of history, Dunblane in my constituency has its own special place in Scotland's World Cup folklore. In 1978, before heading to Argentina, the national team stayed at the Dunblane Hydro Hotel. And who joined them? Rod Stewart, who recorded the World Cup single Ole Ola with the squad. It was in many ways the most Scottish thing imaginable, a glamorous superstar, a hopeful squad, and a song that still echoes through karaoke machines to this day, though never quite in tune. And just to remind people who might not be aware, because I bought it, I've still got it as a 45 single, one of the lines is, "Ole Ola."
We're going to bring the World Cup back from over there.
We're going to bring the World Cup back from over there. So, Ola rhymes with da. There you go. And anyway, as we look ahead, we now know exactly what awaits us in 2026. Scotland have been drawn into a group that will test us and excite us once again. We're playing our old adversaries, Brazil. I know they were terrified of getting Scotland in the draw, but they've been unlucky once again. And we look forward to those matches. And it will give the Tartan Army two cracking destinations. Our opening matches in Boston and Miami will place Scotland on a global stage in two iconic cities. Boston with its deep sporting culture and historic Scottish ties, and Miami, where I suspect the Tartan Army will do its level best to outsing the palm trees. There are venues fit for a nation returning to the World Cup with ambition and belief, and I have no doubt the players will rise to the occasion, just as the supporters will. But our footballing spirit doesn't just live in history books or national anthems, it lives in grassroots clubs, the lifeblood of our communities. I visited twice over the summer to Socky Juniors, one of my local teams, and the work they do with young kids who are not particularly interested in football in some cases, but who really value the time they have with some instruction, being able to kick a ball around with some of their friends, some of the most deprived parts of my constituency. What St Socky Juniors do is fantastic, and the same is true of St Serf's Community Club, also in my constituency, and I'm sure that'll be true for many members. And you have volunteers standing on touchlines in horizontal rain, washing kits, running minibuses, coaching young people who dream of becoming the next Andy Robertson or Caroline Weir. And let's hope that Scotland can succeed in trying to host the FIFA Women's World Cup as well in future. Without these individuals that volunteer and carry out so much of the work, there would be no national team, no Hampden Roar and no World Cup dream. And that's why this qualification matters so deeply. It lifts spirits, it inspires young people, energises communities. So in Clamanshire and Dunblane and across Scotland, people have taken real pride from our national team reaching the finals. It connects our past, our present and the future we want for our young people. And I've written to Mr Infantino, the President of FIFA, to see if we can get the ball taken across to the States and taken onto the pitch at the first match. I think the President's son has already spoken very warmly about the fact that Scotland have qualified, so I'm sure there will be a great deal of goodwill if we can do that. So today, President Officer, we congratulate Scotland's national team, Steve Clark and his staff. We salute, of course, the Tartan Army. We celebrate the clubs and volunteers who keep the game alive. And we honour a history that stretches from Stirling Castle to South America. And we wish our team every success as preparations begin for the 2026 World Cup. And if Shankland scores the winner in the final, well, even as a Hibs fan, I'll promise that I'll cheer. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Brown. We now move to the open debate. Backbench speeches of up to 4 minutes. I call George Adam to be followed by Brian Whistle.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Presiding Officer, can I take this opportunity to thank my friend and colleague Keith Brown for being the first off the starting blocks with this motion. I know there's been quite a few people putting a similar motion to put this forward. But it is, of course, a great honour to talk about Scotland's qualification in World Cup finals. And to be honest, if I can't play for the team, I might as well watch them and talk about them. But this is one of the best things that's happened to our national team in a long time. I do want to remind everyone that, of course, it all starts from Paisley and St Mirren, because Kenny McLean, John McGinn and Stevie Clark all started their careers in Paisley in football. So you don't need to thank me all too quickly and too soon, because I'm quite willing to wait for you to all be grateful to that Paisley connection that's got us to the Americas for the World Cup. Presiding Officer, in my lifetime, Scotland has qualified 7 times for World Cup finals, most of them when I was in short trousers. My first adult World Cup was in 1990. I watched, I suffered and experienced what would become a lifetime of heartache. We lost to Costa Rica 1-0, beat Sweden 2-1 and then went down to Brazil 1-0, courtesy of a scrappy goal in the 81st minute. I've still not quite got over that. I've still never forgiven Jim Leighton, a normally very good goalkeeper, for managing to let that goal in. Don't even ask me what I think about Gary McAllister's penalty against England from Euro 96. Just don't mention his name. But I do remember 1978, and to be fair to the late great Ali MacLeod, we had a fantastic team. However, we were beaten 3-1 by Peru. My dad started the game in the house in full Highland regalia. By the time half-time came, he was in jeans and a T-shirt for the second half. And 1-1 against Iran, we had a draw. And then that famous night against Netherlands almost became the miracle of Mendoza, when Archie Gemmell, incidentally, from Glenburn and Paisley, started his career at St Mirren as well, became an absolute legend as he single-handedly took on a team that would go on to be beaten by Argentina in the final. We went home too soon that time, and quite a few of the Tartan Army stayed behind, and if memory serves us all correct, a few found love along the way. In 1982, it was more heartbreak. We were against Brazil again, and Dave Neary scored the famous, as Jimmy Hill called it, toe poke to put Scotland ahead and out-Zicoing the great Zico. But Zico equalised with a free kick of pure genius in the 33rd minute. And in 1986 in Mexico, Uruguay kicked us off the park. The emotional scars still remain. Although I do remember in that World Cup, Diego Maradona being rather handy. By 1998, I was newly married to Stacey, and the opening game was again against Brazil. Seems there's a pattern here, Presiding Officer. And John Collins equalises with a penalty in the 38th minute. Brazil reply with an own goal in the 74th. The pubs in Scotland erupted. Stacey and I celebrated as if we'd actually won the World Cup ourselves. And that's what being a Scotland fan is all about. It's about the hope, it's about the heartbreak, it's about the fun, and above all, it's about our pride. On the 18th of November this year, Stacey and I went to Hampden Park, more in hope than expectation. By the 80th minute, Stacey whispered, "Do you really want to leave early? We can get the car out the car park at this point." She obviously clearly wanted to stay away from a meltdown as I was stuck in a car park, knowing we had to go through the play-off. But I knew as a Scotland fan, we never do it the easy way. We never take the easy route. And in the 93rd and 98th minute, the impossible became a reality. The Tartan Army celebrated as one. And yes, Stacey's North Stand celebrations went a wee bit viral when I put them on to the socials. And we're heading to the Americas, and the world will see what Scots can do. Bill Shankly famously said, "Some people think football is a matter of life and death. I assure you it is much more serious than that." Presiding Officer, at 56, I can tell you I'm just as excited about the World Cup finals as I was in 1978. The only difference is I'm no longer obsessed with collecting Panini stickers for my album. Football is important to Scots. It's more than a pastime, it's part of who we are. It brings communities together, defines our identity and inspires hope amongst through the heartache. For many, it is what makes us Scottish. It's in the cheers, the tears and the shared memory of Archie Gemmell's goal, Dave Neary's toe poke and the joy of Hampden in that cold November night. Presiding Officer, football is Scotland. Football is our soul. It's what unites us, excites us, and yes, sometimes breaks our hearts, but it always reminds us of who we are. And when the Tartan Army take to the Americas, the world will see that too. We Scots don't just play football, we live it. It's in our laughter, our pride, our
Mr.
stories.
Adam, I've been generous, but you will need to close.
And the bonds that pass on from generation to generation. And that, Presiding Officer, is why football is more than a game to us. It's Scotland itself, it's our heritage, our joy, our heartbreak, our hope.
Thank you, Mr. Adam.
And it makes
Thank
us
you very
Scots.
much. Thank you. We'll call the next speaker. Could I remind members there's a lot of interest in this debate, evidently, and it's backbench speeches of up to 4 minutes, which is what members have signed up to by volunteering their names to speak in this debate. And with that, I call Brian Whittle to be followed by Neil Bibby.
I'll be sitting comfortably, Deputy Presiding Officer. I congratulate Keith Brown on getting out the traps early and getting this debate in early. And I thought to myself, I was going to come along and just to listen to this debate because, you know, obviously, when I decided why not bask in the reflected glory of our Scotland team qualifying for the World Cup one more time. I mean, I've said in this chamber before, and unfortunately he's left the chamber. But I did say I watched this in the parliamentary bar because we'd all just piled out of committee with Stuart McMillan, Liam MacArthur, and the indomitable, the indefatigable, the inimitable, the inflatable Kenny Gibson, who, as I said, went from a mild-mannered gentleman that we all know and love, to a complete maniac. And the fact that the four of us jumping about crazy in that parliamentary bar, that four people that you maybe wouldn't expect to be together, and the way in which we collectively celebrated that, tells you everything about sport, and tells you everything about football. And the other reason I wanted to speak in here was because I knew that George Adam would be speaking in this debate. And remind him that the Scottish Tory was his childhood hero, and that a Scottish Tory also coached his beloved St Mirren. So I'm taking some of the glory for St Mirren, that strangled route through St Mirren into the Scotland team. And those of us of a certain vintage, Deputy Presiding Officer, reflect back in a time when we always qualified for the World Cup. My first World Cup that I remember as a kid was in 1974 with the Billy Bremners and the Peter Lorimers. Peter Lorimer, what a gentleman he was. I got to play golf with him in Montrose one day. What a gentleman he was. And I always remember that game, as we said there, we came out in 1974 as the only undefeated team. And I always picture in my head that Billy Bremner sliding in at the back post there and knocking the ball against the post there where we could have actually won. And the other thing that I remind is Yugoslavia, when we had to beat Yugoslavia. And Yugoslavia went 1-0 up, and then they gave us hope. They gave us that hope that Scotland always does towards the end of the match when they equalised, and we didn't go through. Ali's Army, 1978. We were going to win that World Cup. He convinced the whole of Scotland, me included, that we were going to win that World Cup. And we went. Remember Joe Jordan scoring to go 1-0 up against Costa Rica, and then they equalised, and Don Masson missing the penalty to go 2-1 and eventually losing 3-1. But it did give us that, probably one of the best goals you'll ever see, that Archie Gemmell's goal against Holman. Again, they gave us the hope, that glimmer of hope, and never quite get there. In 82s and 86 and 98. And here we are again, Deputy Presiding Officer, on our way to lift the World Cup. And in my last minute, I just wanted to say, out the back of this is a serious. We have a fantastic summer of sport coming our way with the Commonwealth Games and the World Cup. And what I hope we do is we grasp that opportunity, not just to be Scotland, the watchers of football, and passionate about that. And we use that, and we give we create opportunity for our youngsters who are inspired by the great athletes and great footballers that we have to take part. We have to give them the opportunity. We have to use these fantastic experiences to give our kids the opportunity. So in closing, I would ask the Minister in her closing remarks if she will tell us how we will ensure that there is a legacy from these fantastic events. And once again, I congratulate my friend and colleague Keith Brown for bringing this to the Chamber.
Thank you, Mr Whittle. I call Neil Bibby to be followed by Paul McLennan. Mr Bibby.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I would also like to thank Keith Brown for bringing forward this motion for debate, which I was delighted to support. It was mentioned earlier that there was a number of motions lodged the day after Scotland qualified. I think there's probably more motions lodged than we scored goals against Denmark. But it has united the Parliament and it's united the country, and rightly so, because it has been a long 27-year wait. But finally we have a World Cup to look forward to, where we can cheer on our men's national team in 2026. This is a massive achievement, and huge congratulations must go to Steve Clarke, the whole squad and the coaching staff for their incredible effort. The team were fantastic, topping Group C, scoring 13 goals. Scott McTominay's overhead kick, Kieran Tierney's screamer, I would agree with Keith Brown about I would agree that was the best goal of them all, and also Kenny McLean's ridiculous goal from the halfway line against Denmark. Moments which I have no doubt we will be talking about for many, many years to come. And it's absolutely right that we celebrate our homegrown talent and our achievements. And as George Adam does, I do think we need to give a special nod to former St Mirren players John McGinn and Kenny McLean, who both played an invaluable part in this success. There's no doubt that all the men on the park and those behind the scenes played their part too, but we also need to, as others have mentioned, pay credit to members of the Tartan Army and all the fans who continue to back the team following years of ups and downs. They never gave up and have given the team and the manager fantastic support. And to see the celebrations of the fans being shared across the world was something special. That is why I was disappointed by UEFA's initial decision to remove videos of fans celebrating on social media. Quite often, there's an ugly side to social media, so to take down content like that was wrong. And at the time, I called out UEFA for this decision and asked them to think again, and thankfully they've seen sense and apologised to Scotland fans. Last Friday, most of us were glued to our televisions watching the World Cup draw. Maybe the less said about the event of the draw, said the better. But to draw Brazil, Morocco and Haiti is a good group, and we should look forward to this, and I know the current squad have nothing to fear. However, I do have to add my voice to the growing concerns about ticket prices. Dynamic pricing should have absolutely no place in our game, and tickets should be affordable, because football without fans is nothing. This tournament is more than just a sporting event. As we've heard, it's a profound cultural moment. For every Scot under the age of 30, this will be the first World Cup they remember our men's team competing in. As Brian Whittle rightly said, it's an opportunity to inspire a generation. We must use this as a catalyst to invest in our young people, to match our ambition with a lasting legacy. And it would be helpful to hear from the Minister whether the Scottish Government do intend to keep their commitment to double the sports budget to £100 million in this parliamentary term, because this event can leave a lasting legacy for future generations of Scots. To make this a truly shared national celebration, we must also facilitate participation for fans who won't be able to travel to North America. Although the kick-off times are late here or early in the morning, I would urge local authorities and licensing boards to consider what they can do to bring people together to watch the games here. This is a moment for our nation to come together, to unite, to celebrate and to enjoy. Let's ensure the World Cup next year is open to everyone, whether at home or abroad. And all that's left to say, Presiding Officer, is to wish Steve Clarke and the whole team the very best ahead of next summer. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Bibby. I call Paul McLennan to be followed by Carol Mulligan. Mr McLennan.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Tuesday, the 18th of November, I arrived at Hampden Park for the gates opening at 6:15. I walked in with a few other early birds and stood thinking what this stadium would be like at 9:45. After Scott McTominay won their goal after 4 minutes, the dream was on. Denmark score and the old fears return. Shankland scores again. Hopes rise. Denmark score again. 6 minutes of injury time goes up, and even then I felt good about our chances. The ball falls to Kieran Tierney. What a strike. What a feeling. 8 minutes into 6 minutes of injury time, the nerves are shot. Kenny McLean wins the ball and shoots. What an incredible feeling as the ball hits the back of the net. Free from desire, blasts out and it sinks in. Scotland have qualified. The passion and love for football is unrivalled. The whole country goes crazy. Scenes from pubs and homes are shown from all over Scotland. My flights and accommodation are booked. The ticket scramble now awaits. So what does qualifying for the World Cup mean to football more generally in Scotland? It must mean a few things to me. It must leave a legacy for our youth game in Scotland. Investment in the grassroots and, of course, the elite youth set-up. I had the pleasure to coach Hibs for 11 years. The SFA recently announced they will be no longer proceeding with the performance schools we have in place. These produce players such as Billy Gilmore. There's also talk of reducing support to Club Academy Scotland youth academies. This would be a retrograde step. We need further investment into these academies to produce players for our clubs so that they can play at a younger age for our clubs. We need further investment into the women and girls clubs and academies. The successive investment into academies by the French Football Federation and English FA demonstrates this. On the back of the financial benefits of our World Cup, we need to invest into our youth game, our women's game, and reap the benefits. One other issue is obviously many of us have campaigned for Scotland matches to be in terrestrial TV. Now, thankfully, before the Denmark game, a deal was agreed, meaning that those not fortunate enough to have tickets could enjoy and endure every minute of the qualifying campaign on BBC Scotland. A whole generation of Scotland fans were able to witness something which we had never witnessed before in their lifetime. But in the aftermath of that game, one thing was overlooked is that the deal with BBC to broadcast the qualifying matches only ran at the end to that campaign, and it's likely that future qualifying campaigns will again be paid for and be all available on subscription services. So I believe that the Home Nations international matches and women's competitive matches should be available for all to watch and should be included in Ofcom's list of Category A sporting events which must be shown on free-to-air television. Now, we all know that the members of our magnificent Scotland team are huge role models for our children and our young people also, and will no doubt inspire our next generation of football players. With this, however, comes responsibilities, and one of those is to stop exploiting children on behalf of the alcohol industry. Big alcohol brands, familiar and not so familiar, will be queuing at the door of Scotland's football authorities to sponsor the team and to get their brands in front of the customers of today and of tomorrow. Now, this type of marketing is not only designed to boost sales by attracting new consumers and targeting heavy drinkers, but also results in young people starting to consume alcohol at an earlier stage and increases the chances of binge drinking. So I would expect and encourage the football authorities to take their responsibility seriously and reject alcohol sponsorship in favour of industries that do less harm in our country. So can I once again, in conclusion, Presiding Officer, thank Keith Brown for bringing the motion forward today. We all know the passion that football has, and I'm a long-suffering Hibs fan like Keith Brown. So let's enjoy the build-up to the World Cup, and as they say, no Scotland, no party. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr McLennan. I now call Cara Mochan to be followed by Christine Graham.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. And can I also thank Keith Brown for bringing the motion forward. As others have said, what a moment for Scotland, for sport and for football. And as others have said, we are a nation of football fans. And on that night in November, so many of us were on the edge of our seats. Thrilling, the motion says, but my husband and my children said it was more nerve-wracking than thrilling. Well, we will, over the next 6 months, discuss our chances, debate the draw, look at who we are playing, where we will be playing, how we get tickets, as other members have said, how we will manage the time difference for those of us that will be here. But I'm sure many of us will need to set timers and alarms to make sure that we see all the games as the United States have these different time zones. But, Presiding Officer, what a moment it was for Scottish sport. But what a moment it also is, I think, for health and for well-being and for football right across Scotland, not just that elite sport that we see in our men's football that took place on that night. Seeing role models like this on our television, on our social media and magazines or in events is so important. And I do hope that the Scottish football, our elite footballers and the government will use this great opportunity to make decisions that really support our communities to be active, healthy and quite hopeful. This is such a great opportunity, and others have mentioned this. And I hope all involved will see the responsibility that they hold in really using this chance to promote well-being and, as Keith Brown has said, promote the work of our volunteers right across football and, in fact, sport. It is so important that we recognise everybody that comes together to make sure all of these things happen for our nation. Again, I really enjoyed everybody's contributions and I congratulate the national men's team, thank them for the joy and ask them to really ensure that this is a long-lasting legacy on the health and well-being of Scotland as a nation. Thank you, Presiding Officer.
Thank you, Ms Walkin. I call Christine Graham to be followed by Fulton McGregor. Ms Graham.
Deputy Presiding Officer, I too congratulate Keith Brown on securing this debate. And having confessed previously that sport, either as a participant or fan, is not in my DNA, colleagues may wonder, or perhaps not, why I've opted to speak in this debate. At first, my motivation was seeing that there appeared to be not one woman, I better step in, so I welcomed the company of Carol Mochan. Even the sport immune Christine Graham cheered at the Scotland team securing that elusive place in the World Cup and doing it with such style. So here I am. At first it seemed that defeat was going to be snatched from the jaws of victory, the way of things so often with the Scotland team. But then, wow, those two extraordinary goals, playing with heart and determination as well as flair. I will come to what that means for youth football, but first, I've been here before. I embraced Ali's army during the 1978 World Cup. There it was, panache, style, razzmatazz, not so much skill. We were all full to the brim with the overrated and oversold expectations of the charismatic Ali MacLeod, bless him. Today's squad, I repeat, have heart, determination, as well as skills. Their impact on the younger generations will be hugely positive. Pennycook Youth Athletic Club has been part of the town since 1888, built on volunteers, families and local sponsors. It now runs more than 20 boys and girls teams, from the tiny early touches for 4- and 5-year-olds through to teenagers. Hundreds of young people growing up active, confident. Football also gives them a place to belong. And it's not just boys' football anymore. Girls' football in Pennycook is booming, with dedicated squads at multiple age groups matching the national picture, where, of course, female participation is now at a record high. There's Arniston Rangers Youth Football Club in Gorebridge, with some 300 youngsters playing between the ages of 2 and 16. It's a number that's growing rapidly each year, as Gorebridge has an ever-expanding population, mostly of young families. There are games across the weekend for all age groups, with Gore Glen being a great place to watch football each weekend. There's a girls' section with teams playing across all age groups. Yes, I'll take Mr Whittle.
Brian Whittle.
I'm very grateful for Christine Graham taking the intervention. I cannot pass up the opportunity to welcome you into the folds of sport, and now that you're converted into the power that sport can be.
Always through the chair, Ms Graham.
I don't know quite how to react. I think that just went a wee bit too far in praising me, but I'll take it. The Arniston Club also has a home at Gore Glen Pavilion, and there's Astro facility at Arniston Park. Next, we'll hopefully see the club have boys and girls teams running right through youth age groups. So, football is not just the Hampdens, roaring full on a Saturday, but local parks, bursting with excitable teams and youngsters. There are more than 160,000 grassroots players across the country, most of them all under 18, all dreaming, playing, learning and building the future of the game. The Scotland team is an inspiration to these youngsters, and I, Mr Whittle, as a sports agnostic, wish the Scotland team and our ambassadors, the Tartan Army, well. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Graham. And I call Fulton McGregor.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. And it is really a great pleasure to speak in this debate, and thanks, as everyone has said, to Keith Brown for bringing the motion forward. What a fantastic achievement from Steve Clark and the team. And before I reflect on that amazing Tuesday night a few weeks ago, I want to, as others have done, think back to the last time we were there, 10th of June 1998. I was in 6th year at Coatbridge High School, and I remember the buzz that day. Everybody having their Hey Jimmy hats on, if you can remember, they were the thing at the time. And of course, the school closing early to let everyone go home and get ready for the game. I actually recall even being in PE when it had been the last lesson and getting changed, and everybody just couldn't wait to get home. Walked a short distance, a mile or so, between the school and my house, and I came back to the street, and my dad had actually put the flags up on a rope that went between my house and what was my grand's house at the time on the other side of the street, and all the Scotland flags up. So it was unbelievable, the feeling that day. And even the narrow defeat from Brazil, as others have mentioned, couldn't dampen our spirits. But what none of us knew on the 10th of June 1998 was that we'd wait 28 years to do it again. During this time, of course, the men's team have had 2 Euros, and under the stewardship of Stevie Clarke, and the women's team flew the flag at the World Cup, and I enjoyed each of these tournaments where the boys and girls done us really proud. But I think that we all know there's something extra special about the men's World Cup, and probably because it's the original one and the prestige it's held in, I think we can all feel it. And the buzz around the nation for the World Cup, it's going to be amazing, whether you're there or whether you're at home. And hopefully that lasts right up to the 19th of July, as others have said. Who knows? But turning back to a couple of weeks ago, I was there with my eldest son, Caird, who's been with me at all the home games in recent years, and some great, some not, car trips, bus trips, traffic jams, pouring rain in the Georgia game. It's all been worth it for that night. I had a feeling, as others have said, that we were going to make the tournament, but nobody could have written just how it worked out. What an amazing conclusion to the game. And I'm going to admit this, I'll admit it in the chamber on the record, I had a wee cry when I came out of the stadium that night. I don't really know why. Caird actually said, "Dad, why are you crying? You should be happy." I said, I'm happy. But like everyone else, I'm sure my screen time went up rapidly in the days afterwards as I caught those goals over and over again. Some of the most amazing goals in Scotland's history, all in one game. And my particular favourite was McTominay's, so since everybody else is picking their favourite today. But moving to some more serious requests to the government, I have a few that comes out of this debate, and some of which I know are not the Minister's responsibilities. That's fair enough, but gives us a wee chance to raise them. Firstly, as others have said, the grassroots game. I think we need to harness this moment. Through my work in the Future of Football Scotland cross-party group, we know that there are major problems in grassroots football relating to things like access to pitches, access for those with disability, and the growing girls' game needs more space. So I still hope to bring a members' debate on this issue before the end of session, but I do believe we need to capture this moment to improve things for the next generation. If we don't capture this moment, how long will we wait for another like this? So it's really important. Others have also mentioned licensing hours, and I think that I know this isn't the Minister's responsibility, but the times are what they are, and I think that local pubs would probably appreciate some clarity from the government on that, although, of course, there's an election between now and the tournament taking place. But I do think that for pubs and other events that might be being held, it's important that we can give our businesses a financial boost. And also, Paul McClellan raised the issue of the TV rights. We need to continue that campaign as well, because it's important that our men and women's international games are on free for your TV. And finally, I would request that the Scottish Government continue to be a voice for good in the run-up to this global event. Tickets need to be affordable. We need to put our voice to that. The ticket prices are absolutely shocking. The World Cup itself should be for everyone, regardless of nationality, race, sexuality, religion, or anything else, without exception. And if there's any concerns about that at all, we should be first to speak out against it. I'm sure that it will be for everybody. It's a showcase event, and it needs to be for absolutely everybody in the world who wants to be involved in it. Presiding Officer, I'll end just by simply congratulating again Steve Clarke and the Scotland's main team, and what was a fantastic achievement. And I can't wait till next summer to see how far we get, and I'm sure it'll be far. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr McGregor. And I now call on Minister Marie Todd to respond to the debate. Up to 7 minutes, please.
Good evening, and thank you to everyone. Good evening, and thank you to everyone who's contributed tonight to what's been a really lovely debate. Actually, this clearly means a lot to people both in this chamber and across the country. I have to say it's estimated that 900,000 people a week engage with football in Scotland, which is not bad for a nation of 5.5 million. The Scottish Premiership's 18.5 attendees per 1,000 people matches last season was, by a country mile, the greatest attendance in Europe. In fact, 70% higher than the next highest attendance in football. Football really does hold a special place in our hearts as a nation. So we have this evening recognised the historical significance of the achievement of Steve Clarke and his squad. A whole generation and some has grown up without seeing Scotland's men participating in the World Cup finals, but wishing we were there. Of course, the women did make it in 2019, and as in all things, I do commend the men for following our lead. Thinking back to 1998, the last time the men's national team graced the world's biggest stage. Since then, football has evolved. Nations have risen and fallen, but Scotland's dream has endured, and this qualification ends a 28-year drought, marking a historic comeback for the Tartan Army. It's a reminder that perseverance pays off and that the spirit of Scottish football is as strong as ever. Now, I'm sure that everyone was glued to their screens on Friday night, perhaps for a little longer than we anticipated, watching the draw. And when we finally got to it, we were drawn to face Brazil and Morocco once again, with an opening match against Haiti in Boston. The match times are not ideal for those of us watching here in Scotland, but I'm confident we'll manage. The emotional and personal impact that football can have can't be overstated. In fact, I've been thinking back to 5-year-old me, who was pretty invested in Ali's army and fully expected us to lift the cup in 1978. The way in which we qualified this year will live forever in Scottish folklore. In the space of a few days, we went from losing in Greece and facing a potentially difficult playoff route to that dramatic 4-2 win over a really good Denmark team, sealed with 2 fantastic stoppage time goals. Andy Robertson called it one of the greatest nights of my life, dedicating the achievement to his late teammate Diogo Jota. I am sure there will be many fans who watched that game who also considered it to be one of the greatest nights of their lives. Across Scotland, pubs, homes and streets erupted in celebration. This is more than football. It's a unifying force for the nation. It's about mothers and sons, fathers and daughters, grandparents and grandchildren, all sharing a moment that binds us together. Now, Keith Brown reminded us that Scotland is home to the oldest football in the world, and that our passion for the game in Scotland was taken to South America, where Brazil and Argentina also caught the bug. But Scotland and England played the first officially recognised international football match. Scotland invented the modern game, and we wrote the rules down. It's no wonder our nation is so excited about our qualification. We love football and have done for a very long time. We know the economic and social impacts of participating in the finals, and we know that they can be significant. Scotland's qualification secures multi-million-pound payments from FIFA, funds that can transform grassroots development and youth academies. Crucially, qualification inspires the next generation. Young players now see a pathway to the biggest stage, fueling participation and ambition. But we also need to harness the excitement and the anticipation around the World Cup to encourage people to get out and to be active and to play sports with their friends or to meet new friends. We know that engaging in regular physical activity is one of the best things you can do to maintain and improve your physical and mental health, and moments like this can inspire people to do that. Very glad to hear of Neil Bibby's commitment to doubling the sport budget, and I look forward to Labour demanding extra investment in sport during the budget negotiations and, crucially, this year voting for it. Thousands of Scottish fans will also be inspired. Yes, I'll take an intervention.
Neil Bibby.
Thank the Minister for taking an intervention. I asked the Government Minister very clearly if the Minister would provide clarity on whether the Scottish Government was going to meet its promise to double the sports budget in this term of Parliament. The sports budget was £50 million in 2021. It's still around £50 million. Will the Scottish Government meet their promised target.
Minister.
So that's certainly still our ambition, Mr Bibby, but as I say to you, it would be much appreciated if Labour would this year engage in the negotiations and crucially vote for any extra investment that is forthcoming. Thousands of Scottish fans will be inspired to travel to North America, showcasing our nation and our culture on a global stage. Now, Euro 24 will be remembered for many things, although perhaps not the actual football from our point of view. Above all, though, it will be remembered for the fans, and among them one group stood out, the Tartan Army. Scotland might not have lifted the trophy, but my goodness, we conquered German hearts and we won the world. From Munich to Cologne to Stuttgart, the Scots brought joy, humour and music. German newspapers piled on the praise. One of them wrote, "Dear Scots, we love you." Even the German police thanked the fans for creating a special atmosphere. The impact goes beyond the tournament. Visit Scotland reported an 83% surge in German traffic to its website during Euro 24. Scotland's image as a warm, vibrant nation was amplified globally. That's soft power at its finest. Football as a bridge between cultures. The World Cup represents an opportunity to put the Scotland on the centre stage and to make these connections on the global stage. We'll look to make the most of these opportunities. Our US-based colleagues are already turning their minds to planning and engagement so that we can maximise economic, tourism, trade and investment and diplomatic opportunities that come with participating in the finals. Needless to say, I love Keith Brown's idea that the world's oldest football is piped onto the centre stage in the opening ceremony, and I'm sure that the Scottish Government will do everything we can to make that happen. I want to take a moment to recognise that this is also a really exciting moment in time for women's football in Scotland, not least the Hibs women, actually, who are bringing to light to the Hibees in this chamber. On the 28th November, a bid was submitted to FIFA by the 4 home nations to host the FIFA Women's World Cup in 2035. This is a transformational opportunity for women and girls football, driven by passionate fans, strong media reach and innovative digital engagement. It'll ensure not just a successful tournament, but also growth and reinvestment in the women's game. And what an incentive for those young players starting their football journey to dream about playing in that tournament in front of a home crowd. It is, therefore, a very exciting time to be a Scotland fan. When Scotland walks out in North America next summer, they carry not just a football dream, but the hopes of a nation ready to write a new chapter in its history. This qualification is not the end, it's the beginning. It's a chance to inspire, to invest and to unite. And I wish Steve Clarke and his squad the very best of luck. Scotland's back and the world will take notice.
Thank you, Minister. That concludes the debate and I close this meeting.